Hello, everyone, and welcome to my older adult interview presentation for Social Work 501. My name is Ben Kane. The person I interviewed was Barbara Garrison, who is my grandmother. So, without further introductions, let's get into my presentation. So, the stage of Erik Erikson's that I chose for Barbara was the generative or the seventh stage, which is generativity versus stagnation. That's the crisis. During Erikson's seventh stage of psychosocial development, individuals experience the crisis of generativity versus stagnation. It is during this stage that individuals begin to think about their legacy. They're going to increase their sharing of things with their families, communities, etc., such as traditions, skills that they've built up. A lot of this stuff is going to get shared with future generations. Typically, this includes attempts to create something that's going to outlast, like your physical self after you die. This process is known as generativity. The failure to contribute to one's society, family, community, whatever is important to that person, that is referred to as stagnation. And just a little other note is the crisis resolution stage here occurs during middle adulthood, generally between the ages of 40 and 65. So, Barbara Garrison during Erikson's seventh stage. So a major focus for Barbara during this time period was developing her children and later her grandchildren in the later part of this 25-year time period into productive members of society. She worked to instill hard work ethics into her children, help them understand the value of money, as well as the value of working hard for what you earned. She did not make much money growing up, generally working a variety of secretarial roles and some factory work. Sorry. She worked really hard to support her children to follow their academic and career goals. A study that I read from the Student Community Journal explored the relationship between generativity and an individual's involvement in their children's lives. In the study, surveys showed that parents who were active in their children's school and social lives growing up felt stronger feelings of generativity and social capital than those who were not involved. Essentially, it's saying that you are feeling like you're giving more to your children and you're experiencing more with them, and they'll remember you more based on how involved with their life you are, which was something that Barbara was and strived to be very involved with both her children's lives and, like I said, later her grandchildren. Continuing, Barbara, her relationship with her children included helping them navigate partnerships of marriage. Initially, when her daughter wanted to get married to her husband, she advocated against her not doing it due to his penchant for drinking alcohol, citing that would be a difficult life. That relationship did succeed. The one between her daughter and her husband, they are still married, and has improved due to the relation between Barbara and her son-in-law has also improved over time, getting to know each other and Barbara sharing more about herself with him. Her son, on the other hand, was married 3 times and married and divorced 3 times during the psychosocial stage for Barbara. She said this was kind of shocking for her, big shock. But she cites that her own divorce as an area that she was able to use to share with him. She divorced her children's birth father when that relationship was failing due to a multitude of reasons. So she advised her son that if he was in a failing relationship, it wasn't like an end all be all, that he had to remain in that relationship if it just was not going to work. And she did not develop particularly close relationships with any of her son's wives. 2015 article by Jerzasek explored the relationship between parents and generativity, or parents' generativity, and their relationship with their non-blood family ties, most notably son and daughter-in-laws. Unsurprisingly, individuals with higher generativity experience better relationships with their in-laws than those with lower generativity. Barbara cited having issues with her children's spouses, despite generally trying to have pretty high generativity levels in most aspects of her adult life. This is kind of one of the places that stagnation really won out, as opposed to generativity kind of having like the lead there. Like I said, the relationship with her son-in-law did improve and has gotten better, but this is over the stage of like 25 years. And so kind of also as she's moved out of the 7th stage of Erikson's into the 8th stage. Last part about Barbara during this stage, this kind of deals with her grandchildren. She worked really hard to be a part of her grandchildren's lives. She stopped working at a younger age than the retirement age to help raise her grandchildren, and cited great pride in what she was able to teach them. Among her lessons were teaching them social skills such as ordering food in a restaurant or greeting others respectfully, cleaning after themselves when messes were made, and messes were definitely made. That was something she brought up a lot during the interview. And working on school work as long as she could keep up with the schoolwork. Just from she went to school during the 1940s. School changed a little bit into the early 2000s. She also enjoyed sharing her experiences with her grandchildren, such as family traditions, history, skills, all types of information to pass down and pass on to them. A couple different studies showed that the relationship between generativity and sharing is generally a positive one. A 2008 study showed how quilting in some smaller communities around the United States had positive effects on the feelings of generativity for the women who were teaching their daughters and granddaughters quilting as a skill for them to learn and to pass on. A similar study from 2014 showed that men sharing oral histories of their own lives with younger people also had received or felt that they had like greater feelings of generativity than those who did not share their life stories. For Barbara, this was a very important thing, was sharing her experiences in her life with her grandchildren, much as it was for the people that were sharing like their quilting skills or sharing their oral histories, what have you. So now we're going to deal with the psychosocial crisis resolution. Okay, so this crisis between generativity and stagnation boils down to how successful an individual feels that they have left something behind to be remembered by. This, like I said earlier, can occur through passing down family traditions, giving to members of the community or an organization they're involved in, teaching of skills such as quilting, which we talked about, or even just passing down like your oral history, your own personal history. Failure to contribute anything lasting in these areas that the individual themselves will identify as important can lead to feelings of isolation and disconnectedness, which is kind of the failure to resolve this crisis, and that would be known as stagnation. For Barbara, this crisis focused primarily on her ability to teach her children and grandchildren social skills, work skills, and about her history. Barbara was very proud of all that she instilled on her blood relatives, which she talked about a lot during the interview. She was very, very proud of how much of an impact she was able to have on both her children and her grandchildren, and she just felt very prideful in the positive work that she had done with them. The struggle between generativity and stagnation. As shown earlier, Barbara's greatest struggle with generativity came within relationships with her in-laws. throughout her life, marriage was been a kind of had a negative connotation a little bit for Barbara. Um, Her father died when she was young, so her mother remarried a man who she had um, no positive things to say about. And then her own first marriage ended in a divorce and included a pretty stressful trip to Mexico, which we're going to get into in just a little bit. And her son also had three marriages during this psychosocial stage. All these situations showed marriage as painful, angry, and overall negative experiences. This likely played a role in Barbara's struggles to connect with her in-laws and to share her life and things she cared about with them. Another component of this struggle would likely be society's feelings regarding divorce, which, I mean, certainly become more liberal in this day and age. But when she got her divorce in the early 70s, communities and like particularly the Catholic Church, which she was pretty involved with at the time, looked down on those who were unable to make a marriage work, particularly with women. Uh, so what ended up happening was the church was just going to completely wipe the marriage away from the books. Um, this would have been a problem because it would have delegitimized her children. Um, if the marriage had never existed because they were born during the marriage. And so this is why she ended up having to go to Mexico to actually get her divorce done, so that the church would consider her marriage that it actually had happened and not try to erase it, which seems weird. And this whole ordeal left a bad taste in her mouth and led to her personal exodus from the church. Her negative experiences with marriage and divorce led Barbara to have negative feelings on relationships with her in-laws that resulted in stagnation, in this aspect of her crisis struggle. The success, generativity versus stagnation. Growing up, opportunities were far from endless for Barbara. She was the seventh child of 11, and money was always a concern with her family. Her primary goal was to graduate high school, which was a feat that had not been accomplished by her family. Prior to her doing so, she was actually the first. And she was regularly denied opportunities because just being a woman in that time was not, an easy thing. Not a lot of opportunities were provided. Some such things were, wanting to work different hours that fit her schedule more, receive fair pay, which, we're still working on that too, and even experience comfortable working conditions. The lack of opportunities presented to Barbara growing up contributes to how she encouraged and supported her children and later grandchildren to utilize the opportunities that were presented to them. She shared in these experiences, in part due to the lack of opportunity she had in her own life. And the systems, how the multiple systems shaped the crisis resolution. So we kind of discussed a little bit about the Mexico ordeal with her marriage. That coupled with the fact that the church didn't really help her family out much. I mean, they were very poor when she was growing up. A family of 11 children with a mother and a stepfather, I guess. And the church never really contributed much to helping them out. Similarly, her community did not provide much aid, and so really those two weren't really much of a focus for her generativity. Family definitely came across as the strongest thing. It started, or with in her life. It started with her siblings helping her raising her and her mother's very strong role in her life. She credits graduating high school to her siblings for working to support her financially so that she could continue to do so. And then her siblings also helped her with raising her children after her first husband split up with her before she married her new one. So that's going to conclude the first part of this presentation. We're going to pick up with the second part in just a minute.